All right, it's Rock Talk, and part of the objective here is to bring on interesting people that I enjoy hanging with, and one of my longest and dearest friends, Brian Rojik. I don't think there's anybody longer in terms of years that I've been friends with, maybe your brother. There's always debate of how...
A couple months, maybe, tops.
How long it was, who I met first.
Right.
Yeah, so we grew up together in the South Plymouth area, and we wanted to come. We've been talking about doing podcasts all the time anyway. So this is, and we had done historically great movies. We've done films that were just in the archives of the American Film Institute, deep in the archives, but
lost in the archives, I think.
Yeah, we tackled some difficult issues like drugs and during the Miami Vice years.
That's right.
So growing up, you know, we had a lot of creative energies that we got out, and even worked at the movie theater. So the film and entertainment business is not far from us in terms of our DNA. Yeah. So here we are. You know, you're coming on, and you've got a new business. Yeah. Part of my curiosity when I do this is always to ask entrepreneurs, people who are starting up a business. I know how hard it is to roll out your passion and devote hours and hours to something with really no guarantee that it's going to be successful, right? And so you've been in all different kinds of business. You didn't get started in, we'll talk about your business in a second, but what's your background specifically?
I mean, so I came out a school biology major going way back, and thought I wanted to pursue like that medical track. And I started out in the research space, doing something very specific, you know, developing diagnostic tests for laboratories. Yeah. That became very boring and very monotonous. Had the opportunity to do some customer-facing events with that company, and said, hey, I want to kind of pivot into a customer-facing role. Eventually got into sales, and did that for 20 years, sort of worked my way up. Very lucky to have some very good training with some really top-notch companies, take advantage of that, and then sort of in the more recent years, kind of parlayed that into more the medical space in startup roles, which was totally different dynamic, a lot of fun, but you know, unique set of challenges too, right? Because now you're moving into a situation where I didn't have the resources I was used to having in those bigger companies, and kind of had to wear a lot more hats and help me grow a little bit more and make mistakes quickly and improve. So
your company now is a bug spray mosquito prevention. The name of it is?
The name is Mosquito Hunters.
Mosquito Hunters. Shore, South Shore. You're based out of Scituate, so you have Plymouth and Bristol counties that you service, right? And so what was the day that popped into your brain? Like, was it because you saw a void and a need, or was it an opportunity that came up and then you saw, like, how did that all materialize?
Yeah, I mean, the first decision I had to come to was whether or not I wanted to invest in a small business, in a franchise. And so there was a couple things, you know. I asked for a lot of advice for some friends. And one of the best things I heard at the time, and this is going back over a year from now, right? It's taken a lot of prep work to get to here, was don't do something too sexy. And what they meant by that was, like, don't try to invent a marketplace. You know, find a need that's already there in the marketplace and fill that need. So, you know, that's what kind of narrowed my search in specific franchises and what I wanted to look for.
Oh, so you actually didn't know specifically what kind of business you wanted to. You wanted to start something. You weren't sure. So the sport of the entrepreneurial and the startup was more of an interest
100%.
Than you didn't dream as a kid of wanting to eradicate, like, be the Hitler of mosquitoes.
Not specifically,
right?
No.
Okay, but now you're a hero in that world, right? You're the super avenger when it comes to you know, the bugs that
everything
are
but the cape,
ruining us and ruining our lives. So you get this, you see that, notice the void, or you notice that there are certain opportunities. And what ones did you consider that you threw away?
So there were quite a bit. The one that that was a finalist for me was actually a company called Back 9. And what it is, it's a golf simulation organization where you'd lease out space and rent out for private parties, rent out for training, and then even for competitive events. And so they have a national contract with one of the major, not the PGA, but a major affiliation of PGA, where you can go and compete. And it's sponsored by quite a few professional golfers. So that seemed very interesting. But again, that was, I'm sure they'll do very well. But perhaps in the short term, there's going to be a longer runway because they're still trying to develop that part of the market. And it's a very congested marketplace as well.
And there's always the balance of, like, if you're dealing with a luxury item like that.
That's exactly
where the economy dips and people's like, maybe
it's
what
the
I'm
first
going to
thing
cut
that
back
goes.
is my golf
That's
simulation.
right.
I'm not going to cut back on
That's right.
my family's health or something.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So you didn't do that, the golf simulation thing, and which would probably be pretty cool and fun to do.
It would be fun,
but might not be sustainable. Although I would say I don't understand why there aren't more Top Golfs and stuff in this region, because it's cold, the weather's bad, and to do stuff like that seems like
it's expensive.
Yeah.
Like to invest in the initial investment was.
Well, those simulators are like $500,000, like a good one.
Yeah.
And we had a guy who sold them, and we had almost brokered a deal where, because we have all this space, to have them on display, and then we would say we would do a similar kind of thing.
Sure.
But because I wasn't in control of the devices, like I didn't want to book parties, and then all of a sudden he sells out, and then what do you do? You're missing. Anyway, you didn't do it.
I didn't do it.
Good.
That's right.
And that was one. And then was there any others?
Yeah. So I mean, I looked at 10 in total. Yeah. And they were broken into 3 categories. The one category was more of a consulting role, so trying to leverage my experience as a sales leader. That's not something I was interested in doing.
Yep.
I wanted to try something new.
So this is a franchise, right?
This is a franchise.
So how did you hear about it?
I was actually approached randomly by a broker.
But you do have to put your name. So I ask because there are people who probably are looking to do something. Maybe they want to transition in their life, something new, and they put their name out into the universe of saying, "Hey, I'm looking to do." Is that how it works? Like you say, I'm looking to do.
So no, someone approached me.
Oh, out of the blue.
Just out of the blue.
Oh, wow.
It's not something I'd ever considered before. I'm thrilled that it was over a year ago. And I'll tell you,
a friend, local person?
No, not even a local person. Not someone I'd ever dealt with before. Someone who she first reached out to me, had a couple conversations, and then over the course of, I'd say, a month, got to the point where I was comfortable in sort of working, and doing some due diligence. And then we kind of spent about 2 months looking into, as I said, 10 specific opportunities of franchising. Got a lot of help from some friends who kind of went down that same path, and arrived at this.
So part 2, when we talk, I want to get into the specifics of like if you own a home, who would be a perfect ideal customer for something like this. This phase, I'm fascinated by the idea of startups and what goes into that and the struggles. What was the thing that you didn't expect that was like, I'm not doing this, screw this.
Yeah.
Because there's got to be, we were talking before about how state regulations, like I think that the government makes more effort to try and dissuade people from starting businesses. And you're in a business that involves chemicals and health and like protection, EPA, I'm sure a lot of regulations there. So I do understand, but like in a lot of ways, you can start to go down the road. Maybe that's the barrier to entry that weeds the men from the boys, I guess. But what were some of the roadblocks or hurdles that you were like, I don't know if I could?
Yeah, there's a lot of administrative detail that goes into opening any small business, right? And then the complexity of, to your point, dealing with chemicals. There's licensure on top of that you need to comply with and keep in compliance with year after year. So for me, going from as I said, big organizations where I had a legal team, I had a finance team.
You're on your own, yeah.
Now I have, my level of expertise is what I've done in sales and business development, not in tax, not in legalese. So having to leverage advice, having to hire third-party sources to make sure that that the legal documents are sound, to make sure my tax records are complete. all that kind of stuff, and making sure that I have all those areas of expertise in all the different parts of the business. And that was a heavy lift.
And the liability of insurance for your employees
all that.
and all that. And then hiring, like you were saying that's been a challenge because,
Yeah.
I mean, remember, we were kids. We went, talking about when we worked at the movie theater,
Yeah.
you knock on the door, you go in, you're like, hey, can I work here?
Yeah.
And it seems as though everybody wanted a job back then, like you just want something. But now, it's different, like how you apply online. It's less personal, it seems, unless you know somebody.
And I think when people do a job search, that their criteria is very specific as well. And let's face it, I don't think a lot of people think of being a pest control technician as being a career path. I understand that much, but it certainly is an opportunity to do on the side and get some extra cash as well. So it's about catering to the right audience and making sure that that lifestyle fits in with whatever they're up to.
Right.
So I've talked to a lot of folks, for instance, musicians in the area who have some free time, bartenders in the area who have some free time, and have had some success and some traction with it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense creatively. People who work weekends and
That's
nights
right.
and stuff, and they have daytimes free, and they want to make a few extra bucks and get out there. I mean, tell me about the business. What's the business like? So somebody goes out, they're in a truck, and they're spraying.
Yeah.
There's
Another expense, yeah.
Yeah. So when somebody's working, is it a lot of heavy lifting, that kind of thing? Or?
So, I mean, a typical day in the life of a technician would be, be on site at the first stop at about 8 o'clock. We don't want to, we want to be reasonable and respectful for the customers. And then I would say an average of 15 stops per day.
Yep.
Okay, and you're probably spending, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes at each place, throughout the course of the day. So, part of this is the logistics of making sure we're taking advantage of the time while they're in a certain space and understanding the density of our customer base and taking advantage of that efficiency. So we have automation that helps do that and route those routes. But yeah, so basically what it is the technician leaves with the product in the van, and it could be several different kinds of products. So we have the traditional products to spray. We have some all-natural things to spray and different kind of solutions as well. So load it in the truck, and then you're mixing up a fresh product with each stop in the back of the truck. And then basically it's like a backpack with a sprayer.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward.
Like a Ghostbuster.
That's pretty much without the plasma packs. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm wondering how this plays a role in your entrepreneurship. And I don't normally get to talk to somebody that I've known forever, right, since we were kids. And we did every kind of job you can possibly imagine. So there was nothing that we weren't prepared to do. Temp work and the list of things that we've done is just insane. So do you think that your versatility in life has come from a lot of that upbringing of because you came from a good family of your parents were just going to be like, Brian, you are going to work today. Right. There's just no doubt. There's just no arguing that. And so being forced to do all these different kind of things must come in handy of being able to handle any circumstance.
I think what more than just versatility, I think it's the confidence to say, you know what, I've tried a lot of different things. I've failed at a lot of different things, and I've learned from them.
Yep.
I'll tell you, going back to that first job in the lab, I remember after a year, I was promoted. And I remember going home being sick to my stomach saying, I'm going to get fired in the first couple of weeks because I have no idea what I'm doing. Right? And it was just that the insecurity of getting uncomfortable.
But did you want to be there?
I did want to be there, but I was so uncomfortable in taking that next step. And then, over the course of those next 10 years, when, not only did I get promoted, I moved out of, that environment into sales, into something more, more customer facing and really more independent, where now you got to sing for your food, right? And your failure, it's not just, you're not getting promoted, you're not getting paid.
Right.
Right. So, I learned at an earlier age that if I'm ever comfortable with what I'm doing, that I'm not learning, and there's probably something wrong. To force myself to be a little uncomfortable. So when you talk about, starting a franchise, starting from scratch, by the way, so 0 customers. 6 months ago I had 0 customers.
Well, let me ask, did you know ahead of time if you had to do it all over again?
Yeah.
Would you do it as easily? Like, would you commit to it as easily, or were there points where like I'm already in this, I'm halfway up a ladder that I'm going to the top with it? Like you're jumping out of a plane without a parachute. You figure that out on the way down. But would you jump out of the plane without the parachute knowing, or did you jump out thinking the parachute was on and being like, this is going to be kind of easy, and then been like, okay, this is harder than I thought?
knew I could make it work.
Yeah.
Right.
By will and determination, and you're investing in yourself.
And for me, it was a matter of how quickly could I get this thing off the ground, and then, like, literally, I am so focused on, the end of this year. That's where my eye is. I don't want to think too far in the future. So it's really about getting new customers, getting visibility into the community. But for sure there was doubt. But if I had to do it again, I'd do it in a heartbeat, and I'd do it better because I did make some mistakes. I could have done things more efficiently. I could have done things quicker. But I'm here now, and I'm happy with where I am now, and I'm happy with the work I put in. I'd do it again.
So this kind of industry is seasonal but year-round, right? I mean, you're obviously, you don't have downtime per se, because whether you're not out there with customers, you're probably building up, hiring, new season, planning, budgeting, all of that kind of stuff, right? I mean, but there's pressure, especially in your first year, to take advantage of the spring and summer and fall months. I mean, I'm sure.
Right. Yes. So there's most of the business is seasonal, but there are some aspects. For instance, say like the perimeter pest control. Like pests start coming into the house like when the seasons change. So when it gets colder.
Yeah.
So that aspect of the business will be year round. It's a percentage for sure. But yeah, there is definitely seasonality, and all the more reason to take advantage, literally while the sun still shines, to make sure we get.
I was blown away. I picked a tick off my dog like a few weeks ago. It was like 0 out, and I never expected to be able to see that. And I mean, even though it was frigid, now it's starting to get nice out, but like that. Those temperatures, I guess, don't be lulled into a false sense of security, right? Because there's things living.
Yeah, so people talk about after the first frost, there's nothing to worry about, and there's a truth in that the activity goes down, but like you say in the instance, here we go with mosquito talk, right? But mosquitoes go through a phase called diapause, where it's hibernation, so that they're not dead, but they're just inactive, like birds go into del torpor, bears go into hibernation. They do the same thing. In addition to that, a lot of mosquitoes lay their larvae towards the end of the season. So the larvae sits right now in the grass, and all that's going to hatch. What you need specifically is 3 days in a row of about 55 degrees, and then the activity goes from 0 to like off the charts. So one great practice, a best practice for folks who have a grassy or a wooded area, in the perimeter of the house, is to get at that before that event happens, because then your jump off point's a lot lower, and it makes the maintenance, the program that you're on, that much easier, because you haven't been overwhelmed first, and you're starting from ground zero, not from an elevated.
I mean, I know all this stuff pretty intimately because I'm a huge fan of mosquitoes. But I think for the audience, they probably don't know the science and the biology of how that works. And this is good information for them, right, to understand. And I would say, too, part of the issue with just human beings co-living with nature, right, is that you have new developments, you have all sorts of things. Forget about mosquitoes. If you have deer or coyote or whatever, and they're being pushed out of areas because of development, is that the same kind of thing do mosquitoes and insects and stuff migrate? Like locusts and stuff like that that come in, but like, how does that?
They prefer cool, wet areas.
You've talked to them, you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've done real research, like focus groups.
Exactly.
A bunch of mosquitoes in a room.
And then
and you ask them, and they say, we prefer.
That's right.
All things being equal, moisture.
Moisture, so a lot of times you'll see them like in leafy areas on the ground. You'll see them in standing water. And there's a lot of things homeowners can do to mitigate, the onset of mosquito growth by getting rid of those areas. And that's one thing we do. Like we'll do a walkthrough and we'll point out things. Hey, here's something it's going to be a challenge if you continue this. Like something very specific that you may not think of, like tires, discarded tires.
Oh yeah.
They love that.
I'm just thinking of we have a basketball court, so we have a barrel with like balls in there, and obviously all winter long it's filling up with stuff, and then you don't notice it, and then you've got like outdoor dog dish that sits there, and then you have just like a recycling thing that fills up. Like so many areas.
You
right?
get thousands of larvae in water in a bottle cap. Like a discarded bottle cap with water inside it, you'll get thousands of larvae. Think about that. So it's thousands of mosquitoes just in that small area. So, it's not just about eradicating it once. It's a continued discipline because there's so many opportunities, and there's no pest control, mosquito control solution that's 100% effective for that reason.
Yeah.
But it's a cadence of events that need to happen. It's not a single thing. Hey, I'm going to do this at the beginning of the season, then I'm good for the season. It's something that you have to be diligent with.
Well, I know there are billions of mosquitoes shitting their pants right now, knowing you're coming for them. So be ready because
word is out. Yeah.
Brian is coming with his team, and we think of mosquitoes as the annoying pests at a party, buzzing you, you're swatting them away, which is probably the most thought of reason why you'd want just more comfort in your backyard. But what other reasons from a health standpoint would this be important? It's not just to make your backyard just be suitable for a cookout. It's more so health reasons, right?
Yeah.
Insect-borne disease and bacteria. I don't know. Tell me what's the worst case scenario?
Well, I mean, again, this
malaria.
Do we need very malaria? Unlikely for malaria in this part of the world.
Okay.
Right. Very unlikely. In fact, almost eradicated. Let me be totally honest. But I remember two specific summers. One going way back where we had triple E, incidents of triple E. And again, this is not trying to fearmonger here, but that's a serious disease.
Yeah.
And then you think about ticks and Lyme disease. Well, that we all have friends who were afflicted with Lyme disease, and what's challenging about Lyme disease is a lot of times it goes undiagnosed because.
Well, you think it's something else.
That's right.
Like
the symptoms are like the flu. It's very similar.
Fatigue, or I have the flu,
that's
or
exactly
whatever,
right.
And then all of a sudden you find out. Oh.
Because you don't always have the bullseye rash,
Right.
So it's a lot of times it goes undiagnosed. And the longer Lyme disease goes undiagnosed, the more it gets into your central nervous system and becomes more problematic. So, they say the easy thing is to detect it early. Well, what's easier than that is to get rid of it, right?
Right.
And get rid of the ticks in your backyard. So you talk about, your kids with triple E, where younger kids are more susceptible because they haven't built up the immune system. You think about dogs, and believe it or not, ticks carry heartworm. That's how dogs get heartworm disease is through the transmission of ticks. So if you have a dog, and you talked about,
Is that the only reason, or
that's the
only way?
That's the only.
Like, what if they eat like meat? What's funny? I don't know. I don't know anything about this, Brian.
No,
you making fun of me?
No, I'm not. It's the only transmitted.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go down that sexually transmitted road, but that would be fun. Although I thought a dog, if you eat like raw meat or something, because there's bacteria in there too. I don't know. I mean, I'm not. This isn't a veterinarian program, but like.
Yeah, so ticks.
I didn't know that. My point of like ticks for heartworm.
They transmit. The ticks transmit heartworms, and it's problematic. You're talking about here now, just in the second week of March, where it's still pretty moderate. You're at 55 degrees, say, and there's activity starting. Right, and we have a dog, and I wouldn't think about not, treating you just to allow my dog to enjoy the backyard.
Right. So, all right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. We'll talk more about the process of reaching out and who would be a good candidate. Suppose if you live in Alston or Quincy in an apartment, you probably don't need that kind of service, but there are people that are in conservation areas and all that kind of stuff, and So it's Rock Talk. We're talking with my good friend Brian Rojik, who is launching a new business, and it's got some science base to it. It's got some practical applications that we all kind of are looking forward to in our having a great summer and a good spring and enjoying family and friends and stuff. So we'll be right back with more in just a bit. Hang with us.